Thank you for joining us and welcome to another edition of Answers Network. I'm your host, Alan Cardoza, and our goal is to bring on special guests that can inspire, educate, and in some cases entertain, while bringing answers and options to making our lives happier, healthier, and more successful. And our guest today fits that definition to a T. But before we get to her, I have a question that came in from a listener addressed to me. And although it is a great question for our guest as well, and I think a little later I'll ask our guest to address it as well. But this one reads, I'm an empty nester in my mid 60s and struggle with finding happiness in life. My husband passed away a few years ago, and my children and grandchildren live quite far away. I seem to be having bouts of depression, and I find myself more and more isolated. You have mentioned going through a transition in life, and I was wondering if you have any advice for me. And this is from Jane in Chicago. Well, Jane, my first thought is, um, well, first of all, I'm not a professional therapist, so if you know somebody, if you want to look up, maybe find a good psychologist or a therapy group that's in your area, or maybe even in this day and age, teletherapy groups are also out there and available. The other thoughts I have are to find a social group that enjoys the same things that you do. So if you like to travel, find a travel group. If you like to walk on the beach, if you like to read, whatever it is that is something that you like. In this day and age, there is a group that you can find and you can connect with them. And I think that that's something that will help you get out of this isolation. And one that happens to be on my mind is, and you mentioned your age, um, go to a Happy Together tour. This is a music tour, and it's the music of our youth. And usually it bring back such great memories. And I bring this up because it's something that I went to last night. I was able to do it with the love of my life and part of my own social group that allowed us to have such a great time reminiscing about those times, but in the same way, um, showing gratitude about how thankful we were to have each other as well. So um, I hope that those things will help. The other thing that I would like you to do, because I am so impressed with our guest and with the books that she's putting out, is if you send your address through our website, I'd like to send you a copy of our guest's book, and I'm going to get it myself. I'll have it sent out to you, and I think that if you read that, I think it will also be something that will help you greatly, which really leads us right into our topic today, which is also the title of our guest's new book. It's Chicken Soup for the Soul, your 10 keys to happiness and 101 real life stories that will show you how to improve your life. So our guest, Amy Newmark, is the best-selling author, editor-in-chief, and publisher of the Chicken for the Soup Soul book series. And since 2008, she has published more than 180 new books, most of them national bestsellers in the United States and Canada, and more than doubling the number of Chicken Soup for the Soul titles that are in print today. Amy graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University. She then embarked on a 3-decade career as a Wall Street analyst, a hedge fund manager, and a corporate executive in the technology field. And she is a charter financial analyst. Amy is credited with revitalizing the Chicken Soup for the Soul brand, which has been a publishing industry phenomenon since the first book came out, by compiling inspirational and aspirational true stories curated from ordinary people who have had extraordinary experiences. Amy, welcome to Answers Network.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I'm very excited about responding to Jane's question.
Yeah, please do. Let's start right there.
All right. Well, we're going to be going through the 10 keys to happiness that are laid out in the book, but let me just briefly go over them and talk to Jane directly. First of all, Jane, I'm sorry for your loss and for your isolation from your family. I certainly understand that. I have grown children and grandchildren who are far away and require overnight trips to go and visit, and they're very busy, so I don't see them as much as I would like to. So first suggestion is set up a regular schedule with your remote family members for FaceTime or Zoom or some kind of online thing, because it's amazing how much you can feel involved in their lives if you have that regular remote access. And that's what we do with all of our grandchildren who are in 5 different remotely located families. Secondly, I would get into volunteer work, do some kind of volunteering. It's the thing that therapists recommend so often for people who are depressed. And I'm sure, Jane, that you're not clinically depressed, but you're still depressed. And volunteering really helps because it shows you that your life has value, that you still have something to contribute, and you start to create a network of friends and colleagues through volunteering. And it can be in any area that you're interested in. You could work at the dog shelter if you are worried about COVID, because you're not going to get it from a dog. You could just pursue any kind of passion, but as a volunteer. Another suggestion I have is to get outside in nature, because it's amazing how just taking a walk a few times a week repositions your feelings about your life, and it just shows that you're just one tiny person in the grand scheme of things, and it puts your problems in perspective. And it's interesting how happy you can feel just watching squirrels and birds going about their business. Another thing that I would suggest, and this would require taking your mask off, but I would suggest smiling at people, because it's unbelievable how it changes your interaction with the outside world. When you smile at people, they will smile back at you, and you'll find that your day is changed. And then my final little suggestion, not really knowing that much about you, Jane, but I would say that you should start a gratitude list practice. And that could be as simple as writing down one thing each night that you're grateful for, or most people find writing down 3 things is what works for them. And it will literally take you 1 minute. And then you'll find the next day that you're just thinking, what items am I going to put on my list today? And these could be really simple items like I picked the right line at the bank, or it could be major things like I have health insurance and I don't have to worry about that. But you have to put down 3 different things each day, or 1 different thing each day. And then after a month, you'll have developed quite a list. So those are some brief suggestions for Jane.
Well, I love those, and especially the gratitude one. And it was something that I wanted to ask you about as well. So share a little bit about the importance of counting your blessings, using the power of gratitude, but how has that affected your life?
Oh my gosh, it's had such an effect on my life. So first of all, let me put this in perspective, just because here I am, a purported expert on these things. So I want you to understand where this supposed expertise comes from. It doesn't come from inside me. It comes from the fact that I've been the editor-in-chief of Chicken Soup for the Soul for 14 years. And I've been privileged to read and work on tens of thousands of stories that regular people have written, where they're really bearing their souls to Chicken Soup for the Soul, and they're sharing what has worked best for them in their lives, what hasn't worked for them. And you mentioned I was a former Wall Street analyst and business, and so analytical. The way I do help is like, it's practical, it's going to work, and there's no mumbo jumbo about it. It's just proven things that work, and they've worked for me as well. So I know that I've become a more grateful person, because when you are reading stories from people who have lost 3 limbs to flesh-eating disease, or been widowed, or just all kinds of horrible things happen to them, you can't help but feel grateful for what you have in your life. And I know that it's helped me a lot. Like, I have cancer, and being grateful about things has really helped me through the 3.5 years so far that I've been on my cancer journey, which is going to go on for the rest of my life. And I went to see a psychiatrist at Sloan Kettering after my first round of chemo. The doctor sent me to see the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said to me, so are you grateful for anything? And I went on for 20 minutes about all the things I was grateful for. My amazing husband, my amazing family, my friends and colleagues, the fact that my job was, I was able to be flexible in my job while I was going through chemo. The fact that I had really good health insurance, so I didn't have to worry about that. All of these things that I was grateful for.
Yeah.
And I literally went on for 20 minutes in my 50-minute hour with the psychiatrist. And then she asked me some other stuff, which we can get into also. Like she asked me, well, do you have any unresolved issues with anybody? So then I went into this whole power of forgiveness thing, which you and I will talk about. Anyway, at the end of the 50 minutes, she said to me, you don't have to come back. You're done. You're good to go. And I said, well, that's the power of having read all these Chicken Soup for the Soul stories. So what I've tried to do in the book that you and I are going to discuss today is I've tried to synthesize what I've learned in these 14 years and put it all into one volume, what I believe are the 10 keys to happiness. And then in this volume, this new collection from us, I have 10 stories that illustrate and show you how to implement each of the 10 keys to happiness. So that's what's going on. And this is really a reflection of what has worked for me over the last 14 years and what I know works for other people based on reading all of these stories.
And that's beautiful. And that was the feeling that I got as well going through the book. But you just mentioned forgiveness. And yes, I would like us to talk about that because you go into it in the book. But how can people best free themselves using forgiveness? I mean, I think that's one of the things that so many of us, we have more trouble forgiving others or forgiving ourselves. And right now, there's so much divisiveness and everything going on in the world, you've got people that normally would get along just fine that now somehow not only don't get along, but can't forgive anything.
I know it's hard. And by the way, bringing up what's going on out there, the divisiveness, Ukraine, raging inflation, all of these other things that are going on. I've actually been on an interview where somebody said to me, well, why are we even entitled to happiness right now?
Yeah.
And I said, because you're always entitled to happiness. There is nothing wrong with different emotions coexisting within you. You can be terribly concerned about world affairs, terribly concerned about divisiveness in this country, and you can still be entitled to the pursuit of happiness. That's really okay. And in fact, I think these days where we feel like so much is outside of our control, isn't it wonderful to think there is something that you can control? You can control your own emotions,
Yep.
the way that you interact with the world. And what I'm handing you in this collection of Chicken Soup for the Soul stories is a way to reassert control over your own life and your own perspective and your own attitude. So getting to forgiveness, you are so right that we should be talking about that next, because I think being thankful is essential to happiness, and we've covered that. But I think using the power of forgiveness is equally important. And I don't know if you can be truly happy if you haven't used the power of forgiveness to shed those resentments and those disappointments and all of those hard feelings. So here's something interesting. I always thought that the word forgive meant that you were basically saying to the person who wronged you, oh, don't worry about it, it's okay. But I didn't realize that forgiveness actually means that you've just decided not to relive the negative emotions that were sparked by that thing that happened, or that thing that person did to you, or that thing that person said about you. So it's not that you're saying it's okay, you're not whitewashing it. You can be fully aware that terrible thing happened. I don't like that person who did that. You don't have to
Right.
like the person ever to use the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness just means you've decided, I refuse to relive those negative emotions because that thing happened in the past. And whether it happened 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago, it's in the past, and that's where you need to leave those emotions. You don't want to keep carrying them with you into the present and the future. So there was a great story. The first story I put in the chapter about forgiveness, it's by Lynn Sunday. And she was always telling everybody about her ex-husband. And she had been divorced for a long time. And this woman was failing to move forward. And then her best friend said to her, Lynn, you might as well still be married to the guy You take him with you wherever you go.
Wow.
Isn't that an eye-opener?
Yes,
It
it is.
really is. Like, why are you carrying this person around with you in your head, invading your space? And Lynn said, oh my gosh, I created a prison of my own making and locked myself inside it. And at that moment, when
Hmm.
she had that epiphany, she said, wait a minute, I know what my husband did in the past, but I don't have to keep reliving those emotions. And she just kind of stepped forward out of that prison, and she used the word buoyant to describe how she felt after she
Hmm.
had that epiphany.
Yeah, it's interesting. The word that was coming to mind for me was freeing. She was freeing herself from that burden.
Yeah, it's amazing. And when you really think about it, and I didn't put this story in the book, but we have this story in one of our books that's just about forgiveness. We had a woman who was stuck again after a divorce, and she went to this group therapy session, and the speaker said to all of them, repeat after me. In my marriage, I did the best I could do. So everybody said, in my marriage, I
Hmm.
did the best I could do. And then the speaker said, now say, in my marriage, my spouse did the best that he or she could. And nobody would say it. And then they realized, wait a minute, all of us know that we did the best we could do in our marriages. So why aren't we assuming that our ex-spouse wasn't also doing his or her best and just wasn't very good at it? And if you adopt that attitude towards everybody in your life who you're angry with, you realize, wait, that cashier who was grumpy at the store, she
Hmm.
wasn't really doing it to me. She was just having a bad day and trying to muddle through
Right.
her day the best that she could. That teacher who was mean to me 15 years ago, he was just stuck with being himself. He wasn't doing it to me specifically. And I'm kind of glad I'm not him and don't have his problems. But he was
Right.
doing the best that he could. He was just flawed. Most of the people who have hurt us had some external motivation that had nothing to do with us. And they were doing the best that they could. They just weren't very good at it. And if you realize, oh, that person just wasn't very good at that, and you kind of stop being angry about it.
I couldn't agree more. And as someone who's worked a lot with teenagers, it's something that I've said many, many times as it relates to your parents. It's they did the best job that they could under the circumstances that they were given and living in the time they were living in. So to try to, I hear so much from young people of, well, my parents did this wrong or my parents did that wrong. Well, the world was a little different then, and they were either working two jobs, or I mean, whatever it was that they were doing. Let's start with they did the best job they could under the circumstances.
Right. And on the reverse side of that, I always say to parents, don't be upset with your teenagers when they do what teenagers are supposed to do.
Yep.
Teenagers are supposed to be working through figuring out that you're not perfect, working through their coming separation when they go to college or move out. So I never took anything personally from my teenagers. I just thought it was funny when
Hmm.
they, would. I remember my daughter came home one time at, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night and went straight to the refrigerator because every teenager walks in the house, yells mom, and then walks straight to the refrigerator. And she's looking in the refrigerator, and I'm like trying to be the helpful mom. And I'm saying, oh, well, we have some leftover this and leftover that. And then she turned to me and she's like, the last thing on my mind is food, and slams the refrigerator door shut and storms up to her room. And I'm just thinking, well, you just lost out on getting some food. I thought it was really funny instead of taking it personally.
Right. I get it, and it's again along those same lines. As a newer parent myself, my kids are now grown and gone and wonderful. Um, I would go to my father or to my stepfather and talk about some of the issues that I was having with them. And about half the time, the answer I would get from them was, so what did you do at that age? Are you judging them to somehow be better than what you did?
Yeah.
And it's certainly an eye opener when you look back at yourself. And so it's something that I then started using when working with families. Is I would say to the parents when they would go, I don't understand what's going through their mind and why they're doing all these things, and go, I don't know, what did you do? And then they
Yeah,
pause for a long time and go, "Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, we were all stupid because we
We
were
all made some
teenagers.
mistakes."
We all did what teenagers do. Exactly. It was just annoying when the kids would get caught. It was better when I didn't know.
Mhm. So, another thing that you talk about in the book, which I love, which is the concept of helping others, using our time to empower others, and how much benefit we actually get from that. Share a little bit about that, and if you have one of your favorite stories from the book that you'd like to share, it's one of my
Sure.
favorite things of this whole show is the great stories.
So, I mean, it's really simple. You could write a check, or you could donate a little of your time. You could hold a door open for somebody. Anything you do gives you those wonderful dopamines, and makes you
Hmm.
feel better. There was a story about a woman whose friend was depressed and had a lot of bad things going on in her life. And so this woman said to her friend, "Hey, there's this woman at church. She can't drive right now and she needs a ride to the store." So the friend who was kind of depressed, all she did was offered a ride to the store to this woman who needed a car ride. And it completely changed everything for her. And it was that
Hmm.
simple. She just took, 20 minutes out of her day and gave somebody a ride to the store. And then she enjoyed it so much that she started driving her around to other errands and really having a great time. But it doesn't take much to get those dopamines going, you know? And I mean, I don't know about you, but even if I hold a door open for somebody, I feel that little rush of
Hmm.
pleasure. And certainly if you do major volunteer work, you're really getting into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's highly recommended. The other thing that I have noticed is that sometimes we see a need and then we stop for a moment. We're like, oh no, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I shouldn't interfere. That's never the right answer. If you have a
Right.
friend, let's say, who's been through a loss and you're thinking, oh, maybe I should bring them some food or some flowers or call or write. Yes, you should always do it.
Right.
If you
Go
have
with
the
your gut.
impulse to do it, yeah, you have the impulse, go ahead and do it. If the person in front of you at the store is 32 cents short, jump in and hand that dollar bill to the cashier and get that transaction done. You will feel great. You'll set a great example for everybody else in the line behind you, but don't squash that impulse. Go ahead and do it.
Could not agree more. Um, one of the things that, again, that I saw in the book, and as I mentioned, I think in the very beginning, or the listener who put the question in mentioned that I'm going through a transition, and the transition involves moving out of a home that I've been in for 28 years. So the concept of decluttering, and you talk about it, and I'm finding a certain amount of joy in it as I'm getting deeper in it, but I'm finding that one of my sons is finding more joy in it, just helping. And so it's become a bonding thing of something that we're doing together. So, and it seems easier for me to let go of things when I'm getting his backing or his approval, because it's stuff that when they were little, and he's like, "Dad, that's okay. You don't need to keep this for me. It's fine." And anyway, it's been something that I've dreaded thinking about, that I'm going to have to go through 28 years of stuff and get rid of all of it. And because of his presence there, it's actually made it somewhat joyful. And I loved when I was going through your book, and I'm like, and she talks about it too. So
So,
share a little bit about that, and maybe
sure.
some of the joy other people can find.
Well, you and I have a lot in common because I just moved 6 months ago from a house I had lived in for 25 years. And so I did the same thing. And I also had to get my kids to finally come and get their stuff out because they were using me as their storage, and
Yeah,
my
that
kids are
too.
in their early to mid 30s, and I've been storing their stuff since they went off to college. So, yeah, it's really interesting how bogged down we are with stuff. And, my husband and I had been trying for years to get rid of stuff. And we would go through fits of being good about it, like clean out
Hmm.
a closet, clean out a drawer. For a while. It was like throw one big black garbage bag a week out, that kind of thing. But anyway, we finally did it for real. And boy, is it liberating, because having all of that stuff don't you find it's just like an emotional weight that you're carrying around with you?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had a story in the book from John Buentello, and he and his wife were moving from a house to an apartment. And so they did the normal thing, you make the pile of stuff you're going to keep, the pile that you're going to give away, the pile that you're going to throw away. And he also had the pile of stuff that was going to go to the storage place. And then before they moved all that stuff to the storage space, he said to his wife, what if we just get rid of everything we were going to put in storage? And so they did. And they never missed the stuff. And they were so liberated. And I have gotten so many chicken soup to the soul stories from people who put the stuff in the storage area. In fact, I was talking to my brother about it the other day, and he put all the stuff in the storage area and then threw it all away. People pay for years.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you could take a vacation with the amount that you spent on putting stuff in the storage area and visiting your stuff in the storage area and moving it around within the storage area. Just get rid of it. And I was thinking about, why do I have all this stuff? Why do I have the extra blender in case my kids ever want it, which, by the way, they never will. Right. Why do I have these clothes that nobody's ever going to wear again? Why do I have weird things like poster board, And then I realized, because I was storing this stuff 25 years ago before you could just order stuff on Amazon. Yep. And now I've realized, so I started getting rid of stuff really seriously a year ago. And I would say out of 100 things I got rid of, maybe I regretted one. And that's what Amazon is for. So just spend $20 and buy it back. But you'll be still rid of the other 99 things that you got rid of. So we have a lot of stories in the book about people feeling really liberated by getting rid of stuff. And one thing I say to people if they're having trouble getting started is, I say two things. One is divided into tiny little chunks, one drawer, one shelf at a time, that kind of thing. But the other is, look at that stuff and say, am I holding on to someone else's blessing? Because it's kind of selfish if you're holding on to those clothes that are never going to fit you again, and they're in style right now. If you hold on to them till they're not in style, how did you help people? Or why are you holding on to that blender?
Good point.
Give it to Goodwill so somebody can actually use it, somebody who's starting off in a new home, or maybe they lost everything in a fire. So that's one way that I do it. And I say to myself, I have this mental image of this woman who's going to go to the church thrift shop and pick up the stuff that I'm dropping off there. And so it makes me really happy. I put the stuff in the car, I take it there, and then my mental image of this woman is that she goes and she picks it up, and it's good for her.
I love that. And it's interesting that I keep a mental image also, which is years ago when we used to do trips down to Mexico, and we would stop at the mission on the way down. And the rule was, if you haven't used it or played with it in the last year, let's take it down for our annual trip down there for Easter. And the picture that I have that brings warmth to my heart is going down the next year and watching my boys look at the kids and they go, he's wearing my shirt. And this one goes, and he's wearing, oh, that was pants that I had. That was shorts that I had. That was a swimming trunks that I had. And they're looking at the other kids that are playing in and around where we went, and that there were kids wearing the stuff that they knew that they didn't wear anymore. And that's the picture that I have that has made it easier for me to let go.
Yeah, it doesn't do us any good to keep it in our homes. And, a lot of these keys to happiness are kind of intertwined, like giving stuff away and knowing that it's going to go and help somebody also ties into, key to happiness number 3, which is help someone else. A lot of these do kind of intertwine with each other.
All right. If for those of you watching, listening, I want you to stay with us. We're going to take a break. We're talking with Amy Newmark, and we're talking about your 10 keys to happiness. We'll be right back, so don't go anywhere.
Founded over 30 years ago to meet the needs of families in crisis, West Shield has continually focused on resolving issues that negatively impact families and businesses. Our signature therapeutic transportation service helps to ensure that adolescents in crisis are safely transported to specialized schools, programs, and treatment centers with unsurpassed experience and success. We are supported by our full-service licensed investigation agency that has legally, professionally, and compassionately located hundreds of runaways and teens. We are experienced and qualified to help, offering solutions which may include referrals to our international network of top professionals in the fields of educational consulting, psychology, psychiatry, and investigations. Simply put, West Shield Adolescent Services and West Shield Investigations are the best solutions when your family is facing a personal crisis. Call 1-800-899-8585, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 1-800-899-8585, or visit our website at westshield.com. Thank you.
And we're back. We're talking with Amy Newmark, and the book is Chicken Soup of the Soul, Your 10 Keys to Happiness, and 101 real-life stories that will show you how to improve your life. And for anybody that has been listening to this show or watching this show for any period of time, you know how much I love stories, so you know how much I love this book. So, Amy, share with us some of the other stories that really highlight your 10 keys to happiness.
All right. So my key to happiness number 5 is think positive. And that might sound kind of predictable and trite, but as I said before, I really do care about things that work. So here's an example of a story in the Think Positive chapter. It's by a woman who learned this when she was in first grade. All right, so she's in first grade. She's afraid to go out to recess because she doesn't know how to do some of the things the other kids do at recess. And so this 5th grade teacher finds this first grader cowering in the hallway, not willing to go out to recess, and says to her, "You walk out onto that playground like you own it." So this little girl walks out into the playground full of assurance, like she owns it, just pretending that she's a confident person. And these boys immediately say, "We need a girl superhero. Will you play superhero with us?" And she gets to be Wonder Woman. Well, she is now a grown woman, and she's still using that advice she got as a first grader. And when she goes into any new situation, she walks in like she owns that playground. And she used that when she became a reporter for the first time. She used it when she interviewed the First Lady of the United States. She walked into that room like she owned it. So I thought that was a really good one. There's another story in our Think Positive chapter that I love, and it's from a guy who we all may have seen on TV because he is the weather dude, and he used to be the weatherman on CNN. And his story is about all of his rejection letters. He saved all of them. And so he has all the rejection letters from all the TV jobs he tried to get and didn't get over the years. And he makes the point that every one of those rejection letters, which represents a closed door, actually was immediately followed by a different door opening and leading to him advancing in his career. And that's one of the points that I make in this Your 10 Keys to Happiness book, is that there's always a silver lining. And I know for me personally, whenever anything bad happens, the first thing I think is, I wonder what the silver lining is going to be. Because there's always one.
I wonder which door is going to open now. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. And, a lot of people have that attitude, like they're told, well, you have to try 100 times before this one thing will happen. So every time they get a rejection, they're like, number 79, I'm on my way to 100. I know I'm going to get it. Yeah. So,
well, and I was to say, being in the business that you're in, I would imagine that, I've heard from so many authors or producers in the movie industry. I'm trying to think of one in particular, but where they'll go, well, I was turned down, 167 times, or some incredible amount, which just shows the perseverance of believing in what it was that they were doing, and knowing and not taking that personally, just thinking that maybe that isn't the right door.
Yeah, I know that Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, who were the founders of Chicken Soup for the Soul, they had they said they counted 144 rejections before they found a publisher who would publish the first book. And I think in that case, it was more like they paid for them to be run off or something. I'm not even sure it was a real, I'm not sure how much of a risk he was taking. Then he ended up being a great publisher and helped them to become, phenomenal success story, a real publishing industry phenomenon. But even when people are submitting stories to Chicken Soup for the Soul, we've heard people telling us about, I submitted 10 different stories before I got one accepted. Because I don't know if you know, Alan, but we have thousands of submissions for each of our books, and we only publish 101 stories in each book. So there are a lot of people trying to get into these books. So it's the real cream of the crop of stories that we publish, stories that we think, best exemplify the topic that we're talking about. But yeah, so we live in a world where there's a lot of trying and a lot of rejections and a lot of eventual successes.
Well, so what are some of your other keys that sort of help people shift their thoughts, which in turn, kind of shifts their way of looking at things or changes their whole world?
So another key that I think is very important is stepping outside your comfort zone. I really believe that if you keep trying new things and even things that you're a little bit frightened of, it will keep you youthful. It will keep you feeling empowered and energetic and invigorated, because we all have this tendency to get bogged down and by accident start leading narrower lives. So do something simple, like go to a different grocery store that you don't normally go to, where you have to figure out where everything is, and you'll be exposed to new products that you haven't seen at your regular grocery store. Or do something really extreme, like travel to another country and force yourself to use another language, and do everything in between. I have a story in the book about paragliding off a cliff in Oman, and I was absolutely terrified to do this, especially when I got to the top of the cliff. And they said to me, the only way the parachute would fill with air would be if I ran off the cliff. So you have a parachute lying on the ground behind you, inert, not doing anything to save you from plummeting to your death. And then they tell you the only way it will fill with air is if you run off the cliff. So that's really stepping out in faith, right?
Yeah.
But I did it. So that's an extreme example of literally stepping outside your comfort zone. But it can be something really simple. I mean, I used to think I hated avocados. And then I noticed, well, they're in sushi. I kind of like them in sushi. So then I tried avocados again, and now I really like them. It could be something that simple as trying a new food, but you'll feel better about yourself if you try that new app or watch that cable channel you never watched before. You try that pickleball sport you've been hearing about, or you try saying something in a foreign language, or whatever it is. So I think that's another good key to happiness. But you don't have to do all of my 10 keys to happiness. And that's what I think is so exciting about the book, is if you even do one of them, it will make such a big difference in your life. So 10 is just gravy if you do all of them, but really just doing one, just following the example set by one person in one of the 101 stories of the book will make a difference in your life.
Yeah, and I got that feeling as well as I was going through it, because I was looking at certain things and going, well, I already do that, or I already do that, and I went, oh, that's a good idea. I should try that. And so
Yeah.
I think for most people, you're going to see some things that you do, but then you're going to get this smile on your face when you think, oh, that would be another really cool thing to do. So what I'm saying is I think there's something for everybody, that, wherever you might be Jane, who's dealing with some depression and stuff, and there may be some different things for her than there might be, for me or for someone else who has a completely different place in life right now. But anyway, yeah, it's what I found. Now, another thing that you talk about is really the importance of me time, and
yeah.
which I think we're now talking about a different type of different personality, and that is the person who has now spent most of their time taking care of everybody else. So you're there. You've been the, or like in my case, you're the room dad and the single parent, and you're kind of doing everything. And I know that there are many single moms out there that have been in this position. talk a little bit about why it's so important that they carve out time to make themselves a priority.
So let's start by stipulating that making me time for yourself is not selfish at all. And if you're
Good.
very altruistic and you're always doing everything for everybody else, let's reposition me time then. It will make you better at that. You'll be a
Good.
better
Hmm.
parent, spouse, grown child, colleague, co-volunteer, whatever it is that you're doing, because you'll stop feeling resentful. You really only need 30 minutes a day of me time to not feel resentful. You just need to carve out some bit of time for yourself each day. And it could be time that you spend walking outside in nature. It could be time that you spend reading. It could be doing your nails. It could be meditating,
Hmm.
taking a bubble bath. Just, it could be going to the grocery store without any children hanging on you. And that could be your me time, going to the grocery store by yourself. We had a woman in the book who was a single mom with kids and never had time for herself. She was working 3 jobs. And every 2 weeks, she would go out to dinner with her friend Kay. And she told her kids, I'm going out to dinner with Kay. You're going to be home for 2 hours. I'm leaving you your favorite meal. I
Hmm.
just need 2 hours to myself. And she would just go out to dinner by herself. Finally, when her kids were grown up, her daughter said to her, who was Kay? Because we never met her. And she said to her daughter, well, you're not very observant because my middle name is Kay, you know? But the fact was, she was just going out by herself, like
Oh,
to the mall and to a restaurant for 2 hours every couple of weeks. And she still goes out by herself. And she says Kay is still one of her favorite dinner companions. So everybody
I
has
love
to carve
that.
out what works for them. We had a great story from Christine Byron, who was selling Tupperware, and she was really, really good at it. So her calendar was 100% filled with sales calls, and she was also training other people. She became a manager. So her success was ruining her life. She had no me time. She didn't have time for her family either, which I would call we time. And she was going to quit. And then her mentor at Tupperware said to her, show me your calendar. And she looked at it and she said, oh, well, I see the problem. You don't have any lily pads. And so Christine said,
Hmm.
what is a lily pad? I'm sure she was thinking it was some green Tupperware
Yeah.
product. And her mentor said, no, you know how a frog jumps onto a lily pad and just like has a little rest and R in the sun? Well, you need lily pads on your schedule. Just put some fake appointments on your schedule and block out half an hour
Right.
here, an hour there. So Christine started putting Lily P on her calendar.
I was going to
And
say,
and you know what? It allowed her to continue doing her job. It got rid of the resentment. She was a better mother. She was better at everything because of carving out that me time.
we have some questions and comments that come in, and I want to take this time to thank those that take the time to do it. And these comments I think are wonderful. This first one reads, I think I have a dozen or more books from the Chicken for the Soul series, and I love them all. So of course I have ordered a couple of copies of this one already. They are the perfect gifts that just keep giving. I feel that I can just open the book to a random page and let the universe speak to me. In much gratitude for continuing to serve up the chicken soup. And this is from Marianne in Washington.
Marianne, thank you. And it, I don't know if you're going to believe this, but when we create our books, we're always thinking about the readers, and we really choose every single story thinking this story might help 10,000 people. And we
Mhm.
know that out of the 101 stories, maybe 10 will really, really speak to you and change your life. So I'm
Yeah.
so happy you've ordered a couple of copies of the book, Marianne, and we'll be giving them out as gifts because
Yes.
they really do help. And what I
Yeah.
like about them is because the stories are short, you can sample them the way Marianne was saying. Like we know some people who say, I'm going to read one every night before I go to bed, and it will put me to sleep in a good
Hmm.
mood and give me some stuff to think about. And we've had some dramatic examples of that working. We had a military wife who got chicken soup for the military wife's soul and decided she would read one story each night. she read a story one night about um, a military man who was severely injured, in service. And, his wife found out about it and was talking about how she was going to deal with it. And this young military wife thought to herself, what would I do? And she envisioned her husband calling her and losing a leg to an IED, and how a year later they'd be at the beach with their daughter and everything would be fine. She went to sleep. The next morning, she's woken by a phone call from her husband who had just lost his leg to an IED. And she was completely prepared for this. She knew exactly what to do because she had read that story the night before. And she sent me a picture of herself a year later at the beach with her handsome husband with his prosthetic leg and their beautiful daughter. So, we know these stories really help people.
Well, and first of all, I want to thank Marianne for not only sending in this comment, but bringing up another way to think about it, because she mentions about the fact that she lets the universe speak to her by randomly picking a story, whereas I'm more of one to where I have a thought of where I want to go, and I look for a story that addresses that. She's now talking about letting the universe have some input in that, which I think goes directly to the story that you just told, that the universe gave her that information just in time to know how to deal with it. I think it's beautiful.
It was. And I do know people will just open up the book. It's the same way some people read the Bible, and I'm not a religious person, but I hear a lot from people who are about how they'll just let the Bible open to a certain page, and then they'll say, oh, this passage is perfect for me today for what I needed.
Yes, I know people that do that quite often. And I just looked up, we've got about 2 minutes, but we have another comment. We got another comment that came in, and this one says, love the book. Now more than ever, we need to stop rushing through our day and allowing the bad news media to overwhelm us. We really need a chicken soup for the soul revival, and to take time to share our many blessings and positive thoughts with our family and friends. Thanks so much for yet another masterpiece. This is from Orrin in North Dakota.
Well, thank you, Orrin in North Dakota. And what I've attempted to do with this new volume is provide you with the tools. Really, you already have the tools. I've just pointed out to you the tools that you already have that will allow you to become happier and will allow you to control what you can, which is yourself, and maybe give yourself a fresh start, even though it's the middle of the year. It's not New Year's, but let's pretend it's New Year's and we're taking a fresh start by implementing some of these keys to happiness.
Absolutely. Now, I assume then that we can get the book at Amazon or any bookstore. Is there any other particular place that you'd like to see them go for the book? And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do that?
So you can find the book at Walmart because they've heavily gotten into this book. Of course, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local independent bookstore might not have it in stock, but they can order it and have it in a day. And where can you find out more about us? You can go to chickensoup.com, and there you can read more about this book. You can see how to order it. And you can also find out how to submit a story if you would like to try to become one of our published authors.
I love it. Well, again, Amy, thank you so much for so many things, for reviving the book series that has brought so much joy and happiness to so many people. Thank you for that. Thank you for coming on the show, and please stay in touch. And anytime you have something that you want to put out, we would love to have you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Alan.
All right. And for everybody out there, please visit our archives of past interviews at answers.network, where you can find out more information on Amy's book. If you're driving and you weren't able to write any of that down, we will post all the information in regards to the Chicken for the Soul series, or any other information on our guests. And you can also subscribe to the show. You can do that through Apple Podcasts, through iHeartRadio, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Rumble, Spreaker, and so many other platforms. We want to make ourselves available to you. So please If you are listen to a platform that you like and they don't have us, let them know you want Answers Network on that platform. And if you like what you hear, please leave a review. Let us know what you think. I want you to know that it's greatly appreciated. And the next time you're on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, please stop by our page, check out some of our latest posts. And if you like them, please like us and spread the word. For everybody out there, be good human beings and be with us again next week on Answers Network.
Here, apply this to anywhere it hurts. It'll reduce your physical pain.
Thank you, Sensei. What about the emotional pain?
We'll learn to block a slap.
You don't spar with the sensei. Marty's Cobra Cove has no mercy on pain. Don't rub it on. Rub it in.
You're listening to Answers Network with Alan Cardoza, only on LA Talk Radio.